In the wake of the Weinstein scandal and the Me Too campaign, I believe you wanted to pick up on the confusion surrounding what actually constitutes sexual harassment.
Yeah, that's right, Nish. Or should I say, stop sexually harassing me, Nish. Because even talking to a woman is now completely off limits, isn't that right, Nish?
No!
No, it's not, Nish, but it's fun to pretend to be confused about that, isn't it? In the light of recent revelations, many men are feeling very worried about their own behaviour and feeling a little bit threatened as well, which makes me so sad. Well done, feminism, says Martin Daubney in The Telegraph. Now men are afraid to help women at work. Well, Nish, as ever, the Daily Mail provides a very good barometer of the British public with this headline, which actually happened. Is hugging still OK? In the wake of the Weinstein sexual assault accusations, men ask, what is acceptable to women in society now? Sociologist Carol Ann Peterson says in the article, men do need to recognise that a sudden arm round the shoulder or a pat on the butt isn't the innocuous gesture some might have thought. Oh, Nish, it's an absolute minefield. What could possibly be wrong with spanking a colleague or the prospect of a sudden arm grabbing you from the shadows?
Wait, hang on. Are these real headlines?
They're real, Nish. They're genuine headlines. Welcome to the world. Nish, if you would, please come and join me and let's see if we can together sort this mess out. It's absolutely impossible to see where the line is, so I've come up with a series of visual aids to help you at home through this difficult time. So the first one, the biggest question is, what is sexual harassment?
OK, well, let me first say, very nice use of the Comic Sans font there, Rachel.
Thank you, Nish. If you're laughing, you're learning. Let's start at the start. So first things first, can I compliment a woman? Yes! You can say something like, hello, you look well, that's fine. But you can't holler nice waps at her from a car. Not anymore. Sorry, Nish.
What do you mean, sorry, Nish?
R.I.P. the good old days. OK, is it OK to give a woman flowers?
Yes.
Yes, you're right, Nish, yes, as long as you don't put your penis in them. It's tricky, isn't it? OK. Is it OK to give a cheery hello to a lady? Sure. Yes, of course it is, but not if you're hiding under her bed. Not according to the PC brigade. Now, Nish, take a look at the screen. I'd like you to tell me, Nish, do you think, in your view, that this is sexual harassment? Hi, Jan, can I borrow your stapler?
No.
He has got an erection, Nish.
Right. Having reviewed this picture and the angle he is standing at, I now see that I was naive to think he was not fully erect.
Very good, Nish. Although, in truth, it's impossible to tell. His arm is directly in the way. Let's assume that this one is fine. But what about this one, Nish? Jan, please come to the server room and wank me off.
I'm going to say, I'm going to say that's a definite not OK.
Yes, Nish, you got one right. So, Nish, I'm going to do now some harassment role play with you.
OK, I am immediately uncomfortable.
Don't worry, Nish. Nish, don't worry, you're a non-threatening beta male who's absolutely tailor-made for the friend zone. So, Nish, what we're going to do is imagine we're in a normal pub situation and we're friends like we are, in a way. How would you greet me normally in a pub?
OK, well, we were friends, so I would just give you a hug.
Exactly, so give me a hug now. But now just hold that for a little bit too long. So, you know what that feels like, Nick? Does that feel right or wrong?
It's feeling more and more wrong by the second.
Yes, that's right, Nish. So if it feels wrong, it is wrong. Sometimes a simple greeting like a hug can be harassment if one of the participants is obviously using it for their own weird gratification. Hugging is absolutely fine, Nish, but is blood suddenly moving to the groin area? If it is, then it's a bad hug. And is it Nish? Is it?
Yeah, no, there's no blood flowing anywhere.
OK, wonderful. Thank you for your help. Thank you. I'm afraid...
Now, don't look at the script, Nish. It'll be fine, Nish. You'll be able to wing it on the night. Of course we wouldn't do anything to make you feel uncomfortable.
Welcome to womanhood. I'm afraid that life is going to get harder now that we're not allowed to sexually harass anyone. Of course it is. But if you do stick to my handy guide, we will manage to walk that terribly fine line between being a decent person and a complete wanker. Good luck to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rachel Parris! Let's take a look at immigration. And apparently that's something we need to do, given how often we hear this.
It's almost inevitable that we need to talk about immigration.
Who will say anything on this panel about the catastrophe of mass immigration?
Let's talk about why 640,000 people came last year.
And given on Wednesday morning, the Foreign Secretary said this.
But we also need to ask ourselves some hard questions about the impact of 20 years of uncontrolled immigration by low-skilled, low-wage workers and what many see as the consequent suppression of wages and failure to invest properly in the skills of indigenous young people.
OK, look, saying we need to ask ourselves some hard questions implies that we haven't been asking those questions already. Is it just me? I feel like all we do is talk about immigration. It feels like for most of my adult life, the only things we talk about are immigration and how we never talk about immigration. Also, Bake Off. And there was that time where we combined them both when Nadia Hussain was in it and the Daily Mail lost their mind and suggested that to win now you had to make something they called a chocolate mosque. Chocolate mosque sounds like Ben & Jerry's are launching new flavours to capture the religious market. Next it'll be Candy Floss Synagogue and Mint Choc Church. So, let's look at how these so-called hard questions have already been asked and answered and subsequently ignored. In May 2016, the Centre for Economic Performance published an exhaustive study on the impact of immigration from the EU on the UK between 1995 and 2015. The report concluded that EU immigrants had no impact on the jobs or wages of UK-born workers, had no negative effect on local services such as crime, health, or social housing, and paid more in tax than they took out in welfare and public services. The report finds, rather than being the fault of immigrants, these problems were the result of the 2008 crash and the slow economic recovery. So, why was this ignored? Well, maybe because facts are boring. Basically, the only person we'll tolerate facts from anymore is David Attenborough. It only took one episode of Blue Planet for him to single-handedly end straws. He's the first person in history to say that's the last straw and mean it literally. Boris Johnson ignored these facts because it clearly would have undermined the Leave campaign. In the lead-up to the vote, a pro-Brexit minister, Bernard Jenkin, told Newsnight they planned to go on the offensive on immigration. The hostility was relentless from the campaign and its supporters in the media. The writer Liz Gerard found that between the 1st of January and the date of the referendum, the Daily Mail and the Daily Express each published 34 front-page articles about immigration. In case you were wondering, none of them were positive. There were no headlines like "Immigrant saves boy from killer shark" or "Foreigners make a lovely jam." The Leave campaign was given a helping hand by years of anti-immigration sentiment that had been encouraged by these guys.
Immigration in this country, as I've said, was too high and out of control. Put simply, Britain was a soft touch.
We help our citizens get jobs instead of more immigration from abroad.
People want government to have control over the number of people coming here and the circumstances in which they come.
Cameron and Osborne spent years shifting the blame onto immigrants for worsening conditions for British people, when in fact it was their now discredited programme of austerity that was doing just that. But when the time came for them to lead a pro-EU campaign, the damage had already been done. The British electoral study asked around 15,000 voters one key question. What matters to you when deciding how to vote in the EU referendum? They took the responses and made it into a word cloud. This is what the Leave voters one looked like. That does not look like a word cloud. That looks like an MRI scan of Nigel Farage's brain. We've been subjected to years of lies about immigration, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. Last month, the Home Affairs Select Committee published a paper called Immigration Policy, Basis for Building Consensus, which said the government needs to be more proactive in challenging myths and inaccuracies, and publish more factual information about the costs and benefits of immigration. And I'm afraid that while this is sound logic, it's a tad too late for the Brexit vote. It's a bit like shutting the stable door after the horse has not only bolted, but is now glue. And if we're to learn the lessons of the last... The horse doesn't exist. Who are you sympathising with? If we're to learn the lessons of the last few years, to move forward with a proper conversation about immigration, we need to dispel these myths. And remember that immigrants are human beings that don't deserve to be demonised to appease bigots or used to score political points, like these two morons did. But the sad fact is that intolerance to immigrants is an easy sell. They look different to you and they sound different to you. So everything must be their fault. Countering feeling with facts is difficult. Also, some people will never listen because their hostility is purely racist and there's no point in me, of all people, trying to change their minds. You never hear someone saying, you know why I stopped being racist? Because a brown man told me on the iPlayer. But what about everyone else? Well, if you're trying to get people to take in a large number of facts without switching off, there's only one man for the job. David Attenborough. Our only hope is that the next series of Blue Planet sounds like this.
Here's a weird jellyfish. Also, what's weird in the decade up to 2011, immigrants from the European Economic Area paid 34% more in taxes than they received in benefits. Blammo, you just got Attenborough. Areas of the UK with large increases in EU immigration did not suffer greater falls in the jobs and pay of UK-born workers. Both falls were the result of the recession and a slow recovery. Tick, tick, boom. Turtles just want security for their children. You know who else wants security for their children? EU citizens being routinely used as a bargaining chip. Attenborough out.
Now, there has been a lot of coverage recently about how young people are a bunch of weak, entitled snowflakes. Millennials are entitled, they're lazy, they're weak, they're the me generation. And of course, they spend all of their money on avocados, which is a sort of savoury pear that costs the same amount as a house. Now, many of the accusations of snowflakery centre upon people who find everything offensive. Non-Mexicans wearing sombreros, the sitcom Friends, opinions about transgender issues, and of course we shouldn't be shutting down free speech, even when it's deemed distasteful. Of all human rights, the right to offend people is one of my absolute favourites. For example, shut up, Nish, you tedious lefty ball bag.
A lot of ball bag these days.
You don't. I don't. But the snowflake accusation is also being used to discredit anyone who worries about equality or looks to improve the lot of humans. Like Lily Allen. She was branded Snowflake of the Year by The Telegraph for crying over unaccompanied children in Calais being abandoned by the British government. Crying in the presence of a small homeless child? How weak is she, the compassionate twat? Am I right, Nish?
No.
Most recently, students who have spoken out about gun control in the wake of the mass shooting at the school in Florida have been attacked on Twitter for being snowflakes. That's actually one of the survivors being called a snowflake. The argument goes that if you complain about horror, injustice or inequality, then you're self-pitying and pathetic. Only this week, Matthew Parris in The Times said that the Me Too movement was about self-pitying and gaining victim status. Matthew moaned that too much of the media was devoted to women moaning too much, and we know this because he moaned about it in The Times and then moaned about it in The Spectator and finally moaned about it on Radio 4. That is a man who needs a safe space. You see, there is a determined campaign to conflate people being a bit squeamish about offensive ideas and language with people legitimately demanding change. And the truth is, history is absolutely littered with dreadful snowflakes. Martin Luther King was a famous hand-wringing liberal. who got all hysterical about the persecution of black people in America. He had a dream about little kiddies playing together. Stop dreaming and do some bloody work, you hipster. And of course, then there was Mahatma Gandhi, a vegan, kel surprise. So Gandhi didn't like his people being oppressed, so he kept refusing his food. What an ungrateful hippie. So, millennials and post-millennials, you are all apparently entitled narcissists, even as you will be the first generation to earn less than your parents, and you will never be able to afford to buy a property. I don't know what the problem is. Don't they like hearing mum and dad having sex as they lie in their childhood bedroom thinking, Christ, I'll be 40 soon? So entitled. Well, millennials, you're entitled to sort out climate change too. Good luck with that. And soz. So is it that young people today are just young people? I mean, idiots, obviously, but also courageous, passionate, keen to make the world a better place. Let's give the last word to Emma Gonzalez, a young millennial who attended the school where 17 students and teachers were shot dead last Wednesday.
Every single person up here today, all these people should be at home grieving. But instead, we are up here, standing together because if all our government and president can do is send thoughts and prayers, then it's time for victims to be the change that we need to see.
What a snowflake. And who knows, Nish? Maybe these young snowflakes will cause an avalanche. Back to you, Nish.
Thank you, Rachel Parris! This week, Jacob Rees-Mogg has quietly become the bookies' favourite to succeed embattled Prime Minister Theresa May as leader of the Conservative Party. Taking a look at the man behind the headlines, please welcome Rachel Parris.
Thank you, that's right, Nish. Lots of people have been getting in touch to ask, who's this plucky upstart Jacob Rees-Mogg? And is he as much fun as he seems? Well, the answer is yes, Nish. Jacob Rees-Mogg is a huge amount of fun, quintessentially English and old-fashioned, a delightful Bertie Wooster-esque eccentric. Jeeves and Wooster, Downton Abbey, The Crown. British people love throwbacks to a simpler time when the upper classes ruled over us with patronising benevolence. Nish, do you like being patronised?
No.
No? I think you'll find you do. But is there more to Mogg than this old-fashioned facade? People are really engaging with Mogg's authenticity. He's not afraid to be traditional and vote with his deeply held Christian beliefs. So, let's take a quick look at this aristocrat millionaire's voting record. Now, as you can see here, he consistently votes against gay rights, women's reproductive rights, human rights and equality. He's an absolute rotter, isn't he, Nish? Just like Bertie Wooster in P.G. Woodhouse's acclaimed novels, Bertie and the Disabled Scrounger. And don't be gay, Jeeves. Rees-Mogg attributes many of his opinions to his Catholic faith. He's talked candidly about how his religion dictates that he opposes same-sex marriage. He also opposes abortion, even in cases of rape and incest. Oh, hang on, I've just seen this jaunty photo of him. He's such a card, I love him. So Rees-Mogg does seem to rather cherry-pick parts of the Bible to follow, though. He's oddly obsessed by the traditional marriage bit, but not so worried about all of the taking care of the poor and the meek. You see, Jesus was famously quite pro-meek, whereas Mogg is an unashamed meek sceptic. He voted to block unaccompanied child refugees in Calais from finding safety in the UK. Thinking about it, Rees-Mogg would have absolutely hated Jesus. He was an immigrant who could walk on water. Ah! The worst nightmare! No passport control for the Son of God.
Absolutely not.
Now, the English love wordplay, and he's even got a half-hearted pun on his own name, Mogmentum. It's a play on the labour organisation Momentum, but he's got Mogg inside it, which isn't something any of us want. So let's just Jacob Mogman to look at his attitudes to women's reproductive rights. And one thing people really like about Mogg is that he's very polite. And when asked whether abortion should be opposed in every case, he replied, "I'm afraid so." Lovely. Well, etiquette is everything when it comes to who controls my womb. I've always been very clear on that, Nish. Another thing that people love about the pro-life Etonian is that he is unapologetic about his views. And I can understand that. When people hold terrible views that can ruin people's lives, the last thing you want is an apology. And you know who else was famously unapologetic in their views? All of the bad people in history. Indeed, Jacob Rees-Mogg stated in an interview, "I am what I am," echoing the voices of gay people across the world whose rights he sought to curtail. So, Nish, the question is, was Jacob Rees-Mogg born this way, or is it more of a lifestyle choice?
I don't think anyone chooses to be Jacob Rees-Mogg.
No. Well, one thing is sure, Rees-Mogg's eccentricity, posed or authentic, provides the perfect cover for some horrifying reactionary values. A Mogg premiership would help return Britain to a golden age where women were second-class citizens, homosexuality was illegal, and foreigners, even desperate children, were treated with utter suspicion. It would be just like P.G. Woodhouse's hilarious novel, Bertie Erases 100 Years of Human Progress. Thank you, Nish.
Thank you very much, Rachel Parris.
An attractive 32-year-old woman believes a man is her friend. Single Joanna Kramer sees her relationship with Wayne Hayes, also single, as being a straightforward mates-type situation that both of them are fine with. Emma Bradford is at the scene for us.
Susan, can a man and a woman ever really be friends? The answer, of course, is yes, but one of those friends will definitely be in a constant state of forlorn emotional calamity. I caught up with Joanna Kramer and friend Wayne Hayes earlier.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time together. Yes. But it's never even, like, remotely weird with Wayne, because he's just, like, really funny and just completely, like, non-sexual. Yeah, I mean, it's like having a gay friend, but he's not actually gay. But, I mean, if I'm fancying Wayne, it would be like fancying, like, a lamp or a table. And I'm sure he feels the same way about me.
Well,
like,
I mean, I'm not gay.
It's not to say, like, that, you know, people don't find him attractive, just not me. And it's because we're so close. I think just, like, the thought of us kissing, it just makes us, like, both feel, like, totally sick and, like, you know, I know he's got a penis. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I know there's one in there, but it's not like a sort of... It's not like an actual penis on a proper man.
OK.
Tonight, Wayne and Joanna have confirmed plans to do a pub quiz together, after which Wayne will go home and cry. Back to you in the studio.
That poor bastard. Reminds me of being at school when I was in love with my friend Sarah.
Did you tell her?
It was complicated because she was also my best friend's mum. A man has ruined a weekend away with his girlfriend by saying what he was thinking. Our reporter Emma Bradford is at the scene.
Martin Bishop and Eleanor Shaw had stopped at a cosy country pub after a romantic walk when Miss Shaw looked up meaningfully at Bishop and asked what he was thinking at that very moment. The weekend was about to go very wrong indeed.
I was hoping he would say, maybe this would be a great place to bring the kids one day. Or even something corny but sweet, like, I have everything I'll ever need right here.
And what did you say, Martin?
I said, pigs are much bigger than you expect. I've just seen some pigs. One of them was so big you could ride it.
And finally, a northerner has been accused of terrorising London by walking around saying hello. Generic northerner Stephen Malley left Londoners traumatised by his attempts to interact with them in a friendly, cheerful manner. Here's Nathan with more.
Malley arrived here at Oxford Circus at 9:32 this morning. He had already said hello to several people en route from King's Cross Station, leaving worried commuters unsure why a man they did not know was talking to them.
He made direct eye contact and then said, "Morning." First I thought, well, is this just a statement? Because, I mean, it was the morning, but no, something in his tone suggested this was a greeting.
Malley was apprehended by London police, who were forced to let him go, as friendliness to strangers is not a crime until next year. Outside the station, Malley gave a statement.
Where I come from, it's OK to greet strangers or comment to them about the weather. I did not know the customs of London, and I apologise if I offended anyone. I did not mean to be happy. I'm going back on the train now.
And Nathan, what should Londoners do if approached by a northerner?
Headphones on, head down, and avoid eye contact. They are generally friendly, but they will headbutt if cornered.